Welcome to Trading Bits and Bytes. I'm Susan Littlefield. Today we're going to be joined by Bertels of Water Street Solutions as no surprise, planting progress, how the markets are reacting, and the upcoming reports are all taking their toll on the trade. We're also going to talk about looming trade discussions with Mexico and China, how it also has its effect on the livestock side. So Aaron, let's start out. Planting progress, that is like the water cooler talk wherever you're at.
It is, and I think we're getting past the point where it really matters to anyone. You've seen, like this last report, we came out, we were 4 points below what the average trade guess was, and you just didn't get much of a reaction out of it. You were strong in the overnight, came back the next day, and did nothing but sell off since that point. So I think they're conceding the fact that we're not going to have all the acres that we originally expected to have. You know, there could be 5, 10, maybe more million acres that we don't have. But they're looking at the big picture of this and saying, okay, that's fine. You know, that's 8 million acres or so, let's say. But you look at the other places like Argentina, Brazil, those places that grew crops this year, the amount of corn that they produce this year above and beyond what they did last year is going to fill some of that void. So the trade's kind of willing to concede that point. Now you're moving on to the point of what's the yield going to be, right? And that's not an argument that anybody's willing to concede yet at this point.
And that's going to be where we're going to have to wait for some USDA numbers and those weekly crop progress reports to keep us kind of up to speed.
And even those, people are going to argue about the results of those, especially on a year like this where you're coming in. It's historical how far behind we are on emergence, on planting, all of those things. Those reports are taken at certain times, right? There's going to be information that's not going to be able to be gathered at the right time, or crops just aren't going to be mature enough to get that information. And so everybody's going to have their own opinion going into these reports as to what they think should come out of them, and they're not necessarily going to trade or change that opinion just because they don't get the information that they like from that report.
You talked about filling the void, and we know that earlier in the week we heard of shipments of corn coming in from Brazil to South Carolina. Yep. Obviously, they're seeing a void, and they want to keep ahead of not getting the feed that they need.
I think it's a multitude of things. So they're probably looking at that. They're saying, let's not take a chance. You know, let's not end up having to pay way more at the end of this year for something that we can pay less for now if this does become a problem. I think they may be looking at the economics of it right now. They may just be saying, hey, you know, our corn is quite a bit overpriced compared to Brazil and that area, so maybe we can just go there now. So maybe just economically it makes sense at this point. But yeah, everybody's starting to cover their bases a little bit here because you do obviously have a problem, right? I mean, that's well known at this point. So they want to make sure that they cover themselves, just like a producer could do if they're selling some grain in certain places, even though they think the market's going higher, or if they're buying calls to protect themselves from that.
You look at what we're seeing as the weather has continued to move from west to east, and we know that there's areas of Illinois and Indiana that are so deep, and we know Arkansas seeing the flooding, northern and Missouri as well, all along the Mississippi, the Arkansas, the Missouri rivers. A lot that isn't going to get planted. How much are we going to see that take a pressure not only on the grain side and the numbers and the livestock side of the trading numbers over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, you're going to have huge questions going into this, and I don't think we're going to get any answers for a while. You know, the prevent plant stuff is not going to be answered very quickly because we're sitting here hoping for something June the 30th when we don't get a lot of crop insurance information until at least July 15th or beyond that point. So I don't know that we should expect a lot of prevent planting info coming in that June 30th report. And as far as that affecting livestock, you know, obviously just moving forward with livestock, I think they're looking bigger picture here instead of the small stuff that grain's dealing with right now, or at least short-term stuff. I mean, livestock's looking more at the fact that we don't have a deal with China. We've got stuff going on with Mexico right now with tariffs that may go into place as soon as Monday. Those are the things that I think livestock's really, you know, getting held back on now, which is seasonally normally a time where they would start to rally. But we've had cold weather, we've got all these other bigger picture issues kind of weighing those markets down.
I spent some time with cattlemen earlier this week, and the discussion was that trade with Mexico, how much that animal moves across the border so many times before it ends up in a package on somebody's grocery shelf.
Yeah, and Mexico being the number 3 importer of U.S. beef, the number 1 importer of U.S. pork, you look at the talks coming out of this, normally you see the same thing we've seen every time here. You see one side saying that they think this is going to get done before we have to enact tariffs, but then you see Trump saying, I'm going to put in tariffs and we need talks to move faster. And typically right now, his opinion has been the one that has won out here. So it's going to be interesting moving forward what kind of impact this has, but you would find it hard to imagine that the market's going to be able to go up if those tariffs do go into place.
Is there any concern in the trading aspect of these cattle that are going into the feedlots, will be going into the feedlots? They've had such a very stressful spring, and trying to get the weight gain and the health quality to bring out a good quality product in the end to that packer.
I'm sure there's always concern, but there was a lot of concern earlier too, and we had all the terrible weather we really had since fall, right? We've had bad weather since fall. And you didn't see that big of an impact on cattle performance, at least from some of the people that I have talked to as you came out of that. So it might be another one of those things, kind of like grains, prove it to me. Prove it to me that it's a problem, especially when you have bigger picture things that we know are happening, not just are they going to happen, they're actually happening.
So in a nutshell, grain producer, livestock producer, how does one market in the next couple of months knowing what we've seen in this past couple?
Well, you've got to try, I think you have to just try to use some common sense, right? It's hard when you have all these things and you have your own opinion about what's going to come out of this. If you're a steadfast believer right now that we're not going to grow the crop, which would be easy to be, you have this feeling that you might just want to hang on as long as you possibly can. We have a different administration in place right now. We have nothing to compare this year to, nothing at all. As far as being as late planted as we are at this point, the closest thing is 95, and I'd hate to try to compare 1995 to what we can do in 2019. So I think you have to have a little bit of common sense about your own individual situation. If you get some opportunities, depending on how much, really just how much you can risk, then you need to be looking to take advantage of some of that.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much. Aaron Bertels joining us today from Water Street Solutions. It is Trading Bites and Bits. I'm Susan Littlefield.